The posters on the walls of the Vancouver recruitment office didn't show the blood. They showed the steel. They showed the clean, blue and white hull of the SSV Normandy, cutting through the stars like a silent blade. They showed Commander Shepard. Standing tall, armor spotless, looking into a horizon of infinite hope. That was the lie we all bought. After the Citadel was attacked, the news vids ran the footage on a loop for weeks. A massive, synthetic nightmare. Tearing through the Citadel defense fleet, the Destiny Ascension, the pride of the galaxy, burning in the dark. And then, the human ships moving in, the Alliance saving the day. Our politicians called it humanity's ascendance. Our crowning achievement on the galactic stage, to a 20-year-old dockworker from the lower levels of Vancouver, it felt like a calling. I wanted to be part of that steel. I wanted to stand in the light. "Sign here, son," the recruiter said. He didn't look up from his terminal. His uniform was slightly frayed at the cuffs, his desk littered with half-empty cups of synthetic coffee. He didn't ask about my dreams. He didn't care about my passion. He just needed to fill a quota. I pressed my thumb to the scanner. The pad beeped, a short, high-pitched tone that sealed my next 4 years. "Welcome to the Systems Alliance, Recruit Miller," he muttered, finally looking at me with tired, hollow eyes. "Report to Shuttle Terminal 4, 6 a.m. Don't be late." That was the exact moment. The illusion of the Normandy began to fade. There were no sleek stealth frigates waiting for us at Terminal 4. There was only a battered, gray transport shuttle, smelling of engine grease, stale sweat, and cheap industrial cleaner. We were packed into the cargo hold like ration crates, 60 of us, shoulder to shoulder, strapped into hard, plastic bucket seats. The kid sitting next to me, his name was Bobby, was shaking. He kept staring at a small holographic picture of a girl with bright green eyes, his fingers smudging the digital projection. "My dad said we'll be home in 6 months," Bobby whispered, his voice cracking over the low hum of the shuttle's sublight drives. "He said the Geth are running. He said the war is basically over." I didn't answer. I was too busy trying not to throw up the synthetic protein bar I had eaten for breakfast. The shuttle lurched, the inertial dampers groaning as we broke Earth's atmosphere. We weren't heading to some glamorous training facility on the Citadel. We were heading to Fort Charles, a desolate frozen rock of a moon orbiting a nameless gas giant in the local cluster. The Alliance called it a dedicated training environment. We called it the freezer. Our arrival was not celebrated. The moment the shuttle doors opened, the freezing, thin air of Fort Charles hit us like a physical blow. Standing on the landing pad, silhouetted against the dim, distant sun, was Gunnery Sergeant Vance. Vance didn't scream. Not at first, he didn't need to. He stood there in his heavy, scuffed onyx armor, his face a map of old shrapnel scars and cold military contempt. He looked at us, 60 shivering, pale civilian kids, and he sighed. It was a heavy, weary sound, the sound of a man who had seen hundreds of us turn into red mist on some forgotten colony. "Line up," Vance roared, his voice amplified by his armor's external speakers. "Double time. Move your civilian asses before they freeze to my tarmac." And just like that, the machine started grinding. Boot camp at Fort Charles was not about learning how to be a hero. It was about learning how to be a part. A standard, interchangeable component of a massive military engine. We were stripped of our clothes, our hair shaved to the scalp, our personal belongings locked away in metal bins. They gave us the standard-issue gray fatigues. They gave us a number. Mine was 8472. For 12 weeks, we did not sleep. We survived. We ran 5-kilometer drills through the frozen valleys of the moon, our lungs burning with the dry, artificial oxygen. We learned how to disassemble and reassemble our standard Hongkedar assault rifles in total darkness, our fingers numb, our knuckles bleeding from the cold steel. "Your weapon is not your friend," Vance would yell, pacing behind us as we crawled through the freezing mud. "Your weapon is a mass-produced tool. It was made by the lowest bidder. If it jams, you clear it. If it breaks, you throw it away and pick up another, just like your country will do with you." It was brutal, but it was effective. By the 8th week, I didn't think about Vancouver anymore. I didn't think about the sleek, clean hull of the Normandy. I thought about the weight of my kit. I thought about the exact pressure required to pull the trigger of the Avenger rifle. I thought about the warm, synthetic broth we were served twice a day, a gray, tasteless slurry that we swallowed like fuel. Bobby didn't make it to graduation. He broke his ankle during an orbital drop simulation in week 10. His harness failing as the training pod slammed into the rocky floor of the hangar. The machine didn't pause. The instructors didn't stop the drill. They simply dragged Bobby out of the pod, called for a medical drone, and ordered the next recruit to step inside. I never saw Bobby again. He was just a line of code on a transfer report, replaced by a new recruit the very next morning. Graduation was short. No flags, no parades, no speeches from Admiral Hackett. We were marched into a cold assembly hall, handed our orders on a digital pad, and told to pack our duffel bags. I expected to be sent to the Citadel, or perhaps the Terminus Frontier, to hunt down the remnants of the Geth fleet. Instead, my orders read, SSV Victoria, Logistics and Support, Outer Rim Patrol. The SSV Victoria was not a stealth frigate. It was a massive, blocky, slow-moving cruiser. A flying warehouse designed to transport heavy machinery, fuel cells, and thousands of metric tons of freeze-dried rations to the colony outposts in the Attican Traverse. My job was not to fire the main guns. My job was not to lead tactical vanguards. My job was inventory. For 6 months, my world was Cargo Bay 3. It was a cavernous metal vault, smelling of hydraulic fluid and heavy shipping pallets. My day began at 0500 hours. I would grab my Omnitool, log into the ship's logistics database, and begin counting. I counted thermal clips, hundreds of thousands of them, packed into neat, foam-lined crates. I counted spare seals for hydrostatic pumps. I counted heavy-duty industrial filters for atmospheric terraformers. Occasionally, a lieutenant would walk through the bay, his eyes focused on his own datapad. He wouldn't look at me. I was just a gray uniform, a minor variable in his daily shipping report. Miller, he would say, his voice flat. Did we get the shipment of dextroamino rations for the Tyrian liaison outpost on Watson? Yes, sir, I would reply, standing at attention. Pallet 12, row 40, confirmed and logged. Good, he'd mutter, already walking away. Move them to Shuttle Bay 2. We orbit Watson in 3 hours. This was the reality of the post-Citadel galaxy. For every shepherd saving the universe, there were 10,000 Millers, moving boxes of synthetic food through the dark. We were the grease that kept the gears turning. Without us, the fleets would run out of fuel. The colonies would starve. The weapons would fall silent, but the boredom, the sheer crushing monotony, was its own kind of battle. In the evenings, I would sit in the crew mess, staring out of the thick, reinforced viewport at the endless, empty void. The stars didn't look romantic. They looked cold, distant, and utterly indifferent. We had a small, flickering vidcom screen in the mess hall. Sometimes, we would get news feeds from the inner systems. We watched reports of the Alliance Parliament debating budget increases, of new dreadnoughts being commissioned at the Arcturus shipyards. The talking heads on the screen spoke of humanity's grand destiny, of our rightful place at the head of the Citadel Council. They don't know what it's like out here, Corporal Vance, a cousin of my drill instructor, as fate would have it, muttered one night, spitting a seed from his synthetic apple into a metal tray. Vance was an older Marine, his face weathered by radiation leaks and decades of patrol duty. Out here, the galaxy doesn't care about our destiny, Vance said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. The colonists don't care about the council. They just want their heaters to work. They just want their water filters to stop leaking. And the Geth, they aren't gone. They're just waiting. Vance's words proved prophetic. It happened during our patrol near the edge of the Traverse, a minor colony called New Canton. It was a bleak, dusty planet, inhabited by a few thousand terraforming engineers and their families. They lived in prefab metallic domes, struggling to grow crops in the acidic soil. The SSV Victoria was in orbit, unloading several heavy atmospheric generators. I was in Cargo Bay 3, securing a final crate of medical supplies, when the alarms began to wail. It wasn't the drills we had practiced 1,000 times. The siren was a high, undulating shriek, the signal for an active, hostile fleet engagement. The gravity in the cargo bay shifted violently as the Victoria banked, her massive engines groaning as she tried to maneuver. Over the ship-wide comms, the captain's voice was tense. All hands battle stations. We have multiple incoming slipstream signatures, hostiles identified as Geth. The fear didn't hit me in the chest, it hit me in the gut. My training kicked in, but it didn't feel heroic. My hands were shaking as I ran to the armory locker, pulling out my standard Avenger rifle. I didn't feel like a savior. I felt like a rat trapped in a tin can. If the Victoria's kinetic barriers failed, if a Geth torpedo breached our hull, I wouldn't even see the enemy. I would just be sucked into the vacuum. Another statistic in the archives. Miller, Vance roared, sliding into the armory beside me. Get your helmet on. We have a boarding party in Sector 4. They've breached the shuttle bay. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic, desperate rhythm. Sector 4, that's right next to the cargo decks. Exactly, Vance growled, checking his shotgun's thermal clip. They want the heavy generators. If they destroy our cargo, the colony below dies this winter. Move. We ran through the narrow, gray corridors of the Victoria. The red emergency lights flickered, casting long, distorted shadows against the metal walls. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and burnt wiring, the ship's environmental systems struggling to clear the smoke. We took positions behind a set of heavy blast doors, the metal cold against my shoulder. Through the small, reinforced window in the door, I saw them. They didn't look like the videos. On the screen, the Geth looked almost slow, mechanical, but in the flesh, they were terrifyingly fluid. They moved with a jerky, synthetic grace. Their single flashlight-like eyes glowing a cold, hostile white. They didn't shout. They didn't communicate with words. The only sound they made was a quiet, constant clicking, a digital chatter that echoed through the empty corridor. They're coming through the junction, Vance yelled. On my mark, fire. The blast doors hissed open. The corridor exploded in blue light. The sound was deafening. The mass accelerator weapons fired in rapid succession, the high-velocity rounds shredding the metal walls and filling the air with a rain of sparks and white-hot shrapnel. I fired. I didn't aim for the eye. I didn't try to be a marksman. I just pointed my rifle down the hallway and pulled the trigger, letting the recoil shudder through my arms. The weapon hissed, the thermal clip superheating in my hands. A Geth trooper, its synthetic chassis sleek and gray, stepped through the smoke. My round slammed into its chest, its kinetic barriers flaring in a bright, violet grid before shattering. The machine stumbled, its optical sensor flickering, then collapsed into a heap of sparking metal. But they kept coming. They had no fear, no self-preservation. They were a single mind, moving through the fire with cold, calculated precision. To my left, a young Marine. A girl named Chen, who had graduated just a cycle after me, screamed. A Geth sniper round had pierced her shoulder, the high-velocity slug tearing through her armor and flesh like paper. She collapsed against the bulkhead, her blood pooling on the cold, gray floor. Hold the line, Vance roared. He stepped out of cover, his shotgun barking 3 times in rapid succession. The heavy slugs tore a Geth hunter apart, but the recoil threw him off balance. I saw a second Geth trooper raise its rifle, aiming directly at Vance's exposed chest. I didn't think. I didn't make a heroic choice. My body just reacted, falling back on the thousands of hours of repetitive, boring drills at Fort Charles. I leaped forward, slamming my shoulder into Vance, throwing both of us onto the metal grating of the floor. The Geth round whizzed over our heads, hitting a steam pipe behind us. A cloud of scalding, white vapor erupted, filling the corridor and blinding our sensors. Through the steam, we heard the heavy, deep thud of the Victoria's internal security turrets finally coming online. The automated mass accelerators in the ceiling began to spin, their high-velocity fire tearing through the remaining Geth with mechanical efficiency. Within 2 minutes, the silence returned. The corridor was a graveyard of twisted metal, scorched bulkheads, and the bitter smell of burnt polymer. I lay on the floor, my chest heaving, my hands shaking so violently I couldn't release my grip on my rifle. Vance sat up, rubbing his bruised shoulder. He looked at the steam pipe, then down at me. "Nice tackle, Miller," he grunted, his voice slightly softer than usual. He offered me a gloved hand, pulling me up from the blood-slicked metal. "You're a terrible soldier, but you're a decent shield." I managed a weak smile. My armor was scorched, my visor cracked. I looked down the hall at Chen. The medical drones were already tending to her, patching her shoulder with thick gray foam. She was crying, calling for her mother. She wasn't a hero. She was just a kid from Earth who wanted to see the stars. The battle was over. The Geth ships had been driven off by an Alliance frigate patrol that arrived 30 minutes too late. The Victoria survived with minor damage, her cargo intact. The next morning, I was back in Cargo Bay 3. The alarms were silent. The emergency lights had been replaced by the standard cold fluorescent tubes. My hand was still bandaged from a minor steam burn, but my Omnitool was active. I logged into the database. I began to count. I counted the damaged crates. I logged the missing thermal clips. I updated the inventory for the atmospheric generators destined for New Canton. There was no medal waiting for me, no commendation from the Primarch, no personal message from Commander Shepard. I was still a cog. I was still a number, 8472. But as I watched the logistics shuttle descend toward the dusty, orange surface of New Canton, carrying the generators that would keep those families warm, I understood something. We don't get the glory. We don't get our names on the posters in the Vancouver recruitment office, but we are the ones who hold the galaxy together. One crate, one bolt, one thermal clip at a time, and that is enough.